Today I'm going to tie up a worm harness. There are lots of different spinner rigs that you can buy that are pre-tied with the hooks and the beads and the blades all in place. But a time may come where your favorite one, you want to replace the hooks because they've gotten dull, or the line's broken and you have all the components, you just need to retie it. Or you may be getting into making your own, so you have a little more control over hook size and spacing, and as well on the number and color of the beads. There are lots of different knots you can use to attach the hooks to the line. Personally, I always use a snell because it's extremely strong, not too difficult to tie, and I like the way it holds the hooks in alignment when it's in the water. I've got a treble hook here to use as my stinger. I have a bait holder hook with an offset eye to use as my primary hook. And then I have my fishing line, which I cut about 6 inches longer than the finished product. And that's going to give me a little bit of line for my waist and for the knots themselves. Our first step is going to be to take our stinger hook and our fishing line, pass one end through the eyelet, and then pinch it to the shank. Now I'm going to find the other end of my snell and then feed it up through the eyelet in the opposite direction, and once again pinch it to the shank. So I have a tag end here, I have a tag end here, and then I have this big loop in the middle. I'm just going to shorten that loop up a little bit there. But you don't want this tag end too long because you want to be able to pass the loop over it. To begin to form the knot, you take that loop and then you just start to wrap it around the shank of the hook. You want to make sure your wraps are nice and neat, side by side, and snug but not too tight. So now our loop is down here. We've got our wraps, and then we have our tag end up here. And I'm just pinching it to hold everything nice and neat. To tighten up the knot, I'm going to pull on that tag end. You can see the loop's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually it buries itself inside the knot. Then you can kind of set it. If your snell is very long, you may want to lubricate that with a little bit of saliva or with lake water. But for these purposes, it was fine. You can see the wraps are nice and neat there. And the line comes through the eye of the hook. As you continue to fish with this, that knot will actually get tighter and tighter, and the coils will embed themselves into that primary line. That's why it's so strong. If you ever cut an old snell apart, you can see the line's almost ribbed where the coils have been because they've dug into it. Now we're ready to add our primary hook. So once again, I'm going to take my snell and I'm going to pass the end of it through the eyelet, coming alongside the shank. And at this stage, we're going to set the distance between our two hooks. So I can either have them really close together, pretty far apart, total preference on your part. But you can see I'm pinching it to the shank of my primary hook now. I'm going to take the other end of my snell, once again feed it up in the opposite direction, so we have something now that looks very similar to what we had before. We've got one tag end, we have the other tag end, and then we have a big loop in the middle. And once again, I'm going to wrap around the shank of the hook nice and neat. See, I have several wraps there. I'm just going to pinch that to hold it. Now, one of the things you want to make sure of here is that our loop doesn't get tangled with our other tag end. So just gonna make sure that is off to the side, completely unrelated to our loop. Okay, so our loop's coming down here. Our tag end with our stinger hook is up there. We've got our wraps, and we have our other tag end. I personally love using these offset eye hooks for this, either if it's tipped in or tipped out, because then it's not holding it kind of on an angle. You can see where it comes through the treble hook, the line sits more naturally on an angle. But on this hook, everything just lays in a perfectly straight line. And now you're able to add any beads or the spinner blades or anything you might need to the other end of this to finish off your spinner rig. And then you can finish by tying on a swivel to the other end, and that'll kind of lock and store everything on here.